You were taught to chase goals like a loyal servant, blindly, endlessly, obediently. But rulers don't chase. They manipulate the systems that make others chase for them. In this video, I will show you why true leadership begins not with ambition, but with control. In every empire, be it a kingdom, a corporation, or your own personal domain, the weak set goals, while the powerful design environments. A goal ties your hands to an outcome. A system ties the world to your will. Understand this: the world does not reward the most disciplined, it rewards the most strategic. The lion that hunts every day dies of exhaustion. The lion that manipulates the herd never starves. In the corridors of power, goals are mere illusions, while systems are chains forged around reality itself. Tonight, I will reveal how to think not as the goal chaser, but as the architect of human behavior, the one who bends systems until they yield obedience. You've been told your entire life to set goals, write them down, visualize them, chase them like prey across the desert of your own ambition. And yet, look closely, most who chase never arrive. They live in pursuit, not possession. They move endlessly, but never command direction. Because goals are the sweetest chains ever forged. They convince you that you are free because you are motivated. But in truth, you are bound, enslaved by a finish line that moves every time you approach it. A goal is a master disguised as purpose. You serve it, you obey it, and when you fail to reach it, you punish yourself on its behalf. Do you see the trick? The goal has become the ruler, and you, its loyal servant. History is littered with such servants. Kings, generals, and modern leaders who mistook motion for control. They chased glory, wealth, and conquest, never realizing that each goal they swore by was a leash held by circumstance. Consider Alexander the Great. He set a goal to conquer the world, and in the end, it conquered him. His empire fractured not because of enemies, but because his goal was an endless horizon. Once he reached it, he had nothing left to manipulate, only the void of fulfillment. You may not command armies, but you live the same cycle. You set targets, you hit them, and yet you feel hollow, uncertain, restless. Why? Because a goal ends the moment it begins. It gives you the illusion of progress, but never true control. The man who lives by goals is reactive, forever chasing, adjusting, compensating. He depends on success for meaning. And dependency, my friend, is the opposite of power. Now ask yourself, what if you stopped chasing? What if, instead of pursuing outcomes, you constructed systems that produce them automatically? The ruler does not chase loyalty. He builds institutions that demand it. The strategist does not hope for victory. He designs supply chains, morale systems, and information flows that make victory inevitable. The manipulator does not beg for love. He crafts an environment where affection becomes a predictable consequence. This is the difference between the goal-driven and the system-maker. The former obeys his ambitions. The latter engineers reality itself. Psychology calls this process orientation, but I call it a higher form of manipulation. When you replace goals with systems, you no longer rely on the fragile whims of emotion. You replace hope with structure, desire with design, and structure, unlike passion, cannot betray you. A goal depends on the future. A system exists in the present, and the present is the only domain you can truly control. Do you understand the gravity of that? The man obsessed with goals worships time. The man who manipulates systems owns it. When you set a goal, you say, one day, I will be powerful. When you design a system, you say, power begins now. This is why the ambitious burn out. They live in a constant state of deficit, always lacking what they seek. Their mind whispers, when I reach it, then I'll rest. But rest never comes, because the goalpost is designed to move. And who designed it? Not you. Society did. Your mentors, your competitors. The invisible architects who profit from your striving. A goal keeps you obedient to someone else's definition of success. A system allows you to define and redefine what success even means. This is how true rulers operate. The Medici did not chase wealth. They engineered banking systems that made wealth flow to them. Caesar did not chase approval. He built propaganda networks that manufactured it. Modern corporations do not chase customers, they construct algorithms that predict and manipulate your behavior before you're even aware of it. Systems are the silent assassins of struggle. They remove friction, automate influence, and convert chaos into predictability. So look again at your goals. Every list, every plan, every dream scrawled on paper. Are they truly yours? Or are they the illusions you've been conditioned to obey? You do not conquer life by running faster. You conquer it by designing the terrain beneath your feet. Stop measuring distance. Start shaping gravity, because the man who shapes gravity never runs. He watches others exhaust themselves, chasing what he has already built into inevitability. And that, my dear listener, is where the tyranny of goals ends, and the art of manipulation begins. But to manipulate systems, you must first learn how to design them. And that is where the next truth unfolds. Power is not taken by force. It is taken by design. The fools fight for control through confrontation. The wise control by constructing the conditions of confrontation itself. This is the essence of systemic manipulation. The art of shaping the invisible framework through which others must act, think, and decide. You do not need to win a battle when you have written the rules of the battlefield. Consider this: who has more power? The king on the throne, or the one who taught the people what a king is supposed to be? That is the system. That is the real hand behind the crown. Systems are not mere structures of process. They are psychological cages. And the most perfect cage is the one where the prisoner believes he is free. Let me show you how this power operates, quietly, elegantly, without resistance. When the church ruled Europe, it did not control through soldiers, it controlled through belief. It defined morality, guilt, and salvation. Three invisible forces that governed kings as easily as peasants. No sword was needed, because the system itself did the killing. That is systemic manipulation, control through invisible architecture. Modern rulers still use it, though their cathedrals are digital. Algorithms, not altars, now dictate what men see, desire, and fear. The system has evolved, but the psychology remains identical. And here lies the most unsettling truth: every system you belong to is already manipulating you. Your work, your habits, your devices, your entertainment. They are all structures designed to shape your behavior in predictable ways. But few ever stop to ask who designed them. You see, the powerful do not manage people, they manage patterns. They create loops of behavior so stable that individuals become irrelevant. Remove one person, and the system continues. That is true control, the kind that survives its creator. Would you rather convince 1,000 men, or construct one system that convinces them all automatically? The second path is colder, quieter, and infinitely more efficient. Think of the Roman Empire. Its rulers did not maintain power by fighting every rebellion. They built laws, hierarchies, and traditions that made rebellion unthinkable. Even the conquered began to believe in Roman order. That is when domination becomes complete, when your ideas live inside the minds of those you rule. Psychology calls this systemic conditioning. You design an environment that rewards obedience and punishes deviation, not with violence, but with discomfort. Humans will adapt, rationalize, and conform. Soon, they call their obedience virtue. The manipulator's brilliance lies not in persuasion, but in design. He does not argue. He arranges. He does not push. He positions. A system once built becomes self-reinforcing. It generates compliance without your presence. It breeds dependence disguised as choice. Let me offer a modern example. Social media is not a tool, it is a behavioral system. Its reward mechanisms, notifications, and social comparisons are calibrated to control attention. You think you are choosing to scroll, to post, to engage. In truth, the system is choosing for you. Your dopamine is the leash. Now imagine applying this to leadership. Why convince your subordinates to follow, when you can build a structure that makes following the only rational act? Why demand loyalty, when you can create a hierarchy where disloyalty self-destructs? This is what separates managers from rulers. A manager motivates. A ruler manipulates the environment until motivation becomes irrelevant. Think of how empires fall. not when their armies are defeated, but when their systems collapse. The Soviet Union did not die from invasion, but from internal decay. Its system no longer aligned with human psychology. It demanded conformity faster than it could reward it. Once the illusion of stability broke, the entire structure dissolved overnight. That is the double edge of systemic manipulation. If you design poorly, your system turns against you. If you design perfectly, you can disappear, and the system continues to obey your will long after you are gone. So, what kind of leader are you? One who commands directly exposed to resistance? Or one who builds invisible machinery that commands for you? Most people still live inside systems they did not design. They confuse activity with influence, unaware that their every move is already anticipated, recorded, and redirected. But the true Machiavellian, the true strategist, steps behind the curtain. He stops reacting to systems and begins writing them. He studies incentives, rituals, and feedback loops until human nature itself becomes predictable. When you manipulate the system, you no longer control people. You control the laws by which they operate. And that is where real leadership begins, because the one who commands directly may rule for a day, but the one who commands through systems rules for generations. Desire is the first illusion every ruler must destroy. It flatters you with fire, then drags you to ruin. For what is desire, if not dependency dressed in ambition? You think desire gives you purpose, but in truth, it gives you weakness. The moment you desire something too deeply, you hand power to whatever can grant or deny it. And in that instant, you are no longer sovereign. Great men fall not from lack of talent, but from the intoxication of wanting too much. Their hunger blinds them. Their attachment exposes them. History remembers them not as rulers, but as warnings. Consider Julius Caesar. He desired the crown of Rome, not merely the power. And in that desire, he revealed himself. The senators saw his longing and struck precisely where his ego bled. Had he detached from the symbol and focused instead on the process, the machinery of control beneath the Republic, he might have ruled Rome from the shadows for decades. But desire betrayed him. Desire always betrays. You chase validation, success, approval, affection, and every chase makes you predictable. The manipulator's greatest advantage is not his intelligence, but his detachment. He acts not from hunger, but from structure. Detach from desire, attach to process, because the process is neutral. It does not depend on moods, outcomes, or approval. It is mechanical, reliable, cold, yet loyal. When you operate by process, you no longer need to feel motivated. You simply execute, and in that consistency, you gain an aura of inevitability, the rarest and most feared form of power. Have you noticed how the calmest people often control the most chaotic rooms? It is not because they are emotionless. It is because their emotions do not control them. They have turned process into armor. Psychology calls this detached mindfulness. I call it strategic indifference, the art of appearing unshaken while others drown in their own longing. You must learn to want nothing so that everything gravitates toward you. When people sense you are unneedy, they project authority onto you. They chase your approval because you refuse to chase theirs. In their eyes, your calm becomes superiority, your silence, mystery. Desire is noise, process is silence, and silence in power speaks louder than desperation ever could. Think of the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. Their philosophy was not born from peace, but from warfare within the self. They ruled their impulses before ruling others. Their discipline was not moral, it was strategic. By mastering detachment, they became untouchable in a world ruled by passions. But let me bring this to your world. Look at your own desires. You want recognition, control, influence, success. But how much of your time is wasted reacting to what you want, rather than designing a system to produce it automatically? You post to be seen. You work to be admired. You speak to be understood. And yet every one of these acts reveals dependence. Now imagine another path. You no longer chase admiration. You create structures that generate it. You no longer seek success. You design processes that manufacture it daily. You no longer need validation, because your work itself validates your existence. The moment you detach from the outcome, you gain the freedom to perfect the mechanism that controls it. This is why the most dangerous men appear emotionless. It's not that they feel nothing. It's that they refuse to let feeling dictate timing. They delay gratification not as sacrifice, but as weapon. They know patience bends the world. When others rush, they wait. When others want, they design. When others beg, they observe. And when the time is right, they move, not out of desire, but out of inevitability. In manipulation, this principle is supreme. The one who desires least controls most, because his mind is clear, his timing precise, his decisions unclouded by need. The world mistakes detachment for apathy, but the strategist knows it is control. Every emotion is a lever waiting to be pulled. The detached man learns to pull them in others, while keeping his own hidden behind glass. Detach from desire, attach to process. It is not a moral lesson. It is a tactical command. You cannot master influence while being mastered by your cravings. Your enemies will always exploit what you want. But what can they take from a man who wants nothing, yet creates everything? When you no longer chase, you become the one others chase. And that is when power becomes serene. But serenity is only half the equation. For to rule, you must not only remain calm, you must make others predictable. Power is not found in chaos. It is forged in predictability. The ruler who can predict human behavior does not need to control every action. He simply designs the conditions where every outcome serves him. Most people believe chaos is power. They mistake unpredictability for freedom. But chaos favors no one. Only those who can order chaos, who can turn human nature into a formula, achieve true domination. Predictability is not weakness. It is control disguised as calm. Think of a chessboard. Every piece moves by fixed rules. A pawn cannot leap like a knight, nor can a rook stray from its path. To the untrained eye, this limits the game. But to the strategist, it is liberation. Because what can be predicted can be mastered. You must learn to see people the same way. Their emotions, habits, loyalties, fears, all have patterns. Once you read these patterns, you no longer react to them. You direct them. Predictability turns manipulation from an art into a science. The most successful empires in history were built not on passion, but on routine. The Romans ruled vast territories not because they were the strongest, but because they were the most predictable. Their systems, legal, military, and social, ran like machinery. Every citizen knew their role, every soldier their order, every enemy their punishment. Rome did not survive through inspiration. It survived through repetition. Predictability breeds stability, and stability breeds submission. When people can predict how the world will react, they stop questioning who made it so. This is the quiet genius of systems, the invisible hand that makes people police themselves. Now let me ask you, how predictable are you, and how predictable are those around you? If your patterns are known, you are vulnerable. If others' patterns are known, you are powerful. In every interaction, one mind studies while the other performs. The one who studies wins. A manipulator does not act randomly, he acts rhythmically. He predicts how emotion will ripple through a situation, then places himself where those waves converge. Take the example of financial markets. While the masses react to emotion, fear, greed, euphoria, the shrewd investor studies the cycles of panic and desire. He profits not from chaos, but from understanding that chaos itself is cyclical. That is predictability disguised as madness. The same is true in leadership. A leader who reacts emotionally is readable, and therefore controllable. A leader who acts consistently, calmly, and decisively becomes unreadable, because he transforms unpredictability into a mask, a deliberate rhythm others cannot decipher. Psychology calls this behavioral modeling. It means understanding that people act according to predictable internal scripts: reward, avoidance, validation, survival. Once you learn these, you no longer fight individuals. You manipulate the scripts themselves. You can predict that the vain will seek attention, that the insecure will seek reassurance, that the ambitious will trade loyalty for opportunity. Human nature is ancient code. Learn the code, and you command the machine. The great strategist never asks, "What will they do?" He asks, "What must they do?" Given their fears, incentives, and habits. When you think in these terms, control becomes effortless. Predictability is domination because it removes surprise, and surprise is the only weapon the weak possess. This is why rulers, generals, and manipulators all share one obsession: information. The more you know about how others think, the less power they have over you. Information turns uncertainty into obedience. The church mastered this long before technology. It studied the human need for meaning, guilt, and redemption, then built doctrines that predicted every moral impulse. They didn't need to control thoughts. They simply defined the paths those thoughts could travel. You can do the same in your own realm. Predict the behavior of those around you by studying what they repeat. Every habit is a confession. Every reaction, a pattern. Listen not to words, but to rhythms. The tone, the timing, the consistency of behavior. These reveal the deeper logic of a person's soul. And once you know that logic, you can make their next move before they do. To dominate, you must think like a mathematician of human nature. Cold, detached, observant. See behavior not as morality but as mechanism. The moment you can predict someone's reaction, you own them. Because from that point on, every choice they make serves your expectation. You become the architect of their inevitability. Do not confuse this with cruelty. It is clarity. You are not removing their freedom. You are defining its boundaries. The wise ruler builds predictability like a fortress around himself, to remain steady, and around others, to keep them trapped in patterns they mistake for choice. This is how power becomes effortless. It no longer requires force. It simply unfolds exactly as you designed it to. But to maintain that control, one final step remains. You must become not just the architect of behavior, but the architect of belief itself. Leadership has nothing to do with shouting orders. It has everything to do with constructing a world where orders are unnecessary. The weak command with words. The strong command with design. Because when your environment enforces your will for you, you never need to raise your voice. Leadership in its purest form is architecture. You design systems, incentives, and beliefs that guide human behavior, while you remain unseen. The greatest leaders do not move people directly, they move the invisible levers that move people. They create gravity, and gravity does not persuade, it pulls. Ask yourself this: do you want to be obeyed? Or do you want obedience to be inevitable? When direction becomes unnecessary, domination becomes permanent. Consider the ancient empires. The Persians ruled lands they could not even pronounce. The pharaohs controlled generations long after their deaths. Why? Because they designed civilizations that carried out their commands without their presence. That is leadership as design. The Egyptians used architecture literally. The pyramids were not just tombs, but propaganda carved in stone. Their scale convinced peasants of divine authority. No decree could have inspired such faith, but the design of their world did. Modern leaders still do the same. Corporations, governments, religions, they are all systems built to outlive the individual leader. Each operates through symbols, rituals, and predictable structures that keep followers loyal, even when the original ruler is gone. That is the essence of power when your design becomes self-sustaining. To master this, you must stop thinking like a commander and start thinking like an engineer. Ask not, how can I make people obey? Ask, what must exist so that obedience becomes their natural state? Design the game, not the player. A true manipulator builds systems where people choose to do what he would have commanded, because it feels like their idea. Psychology calls this structural influence. It's when you shape context so effectively that behavior aligns with your goals automatically. You don't force outcomes. You create conditions that make them unavoidable. Look around. Every powerful institution does this. Schools shape how citizens think. Corporations shape how consumers behave. Social media shapes what the masses believe. You are living inside the designs of others and calling it freedom. The architect of power does not need to control every individual. He needs only to control the framework within which individuals act. He sets the boundaries, defines the rewards, and then watches human nature do the rest. For example, the Roman Senate. Caesar learned that if you command senators directly, they resist. If you design procedures that reward loyalty and punish dissent invisibly, they conform. He didn't rule by decree, he ruled by structure. That is why systems outlast personalities. A ruler dies, a system survives. You can test this truth in your own life. Instead of forcing people to respect you, create an environment where disrespect is costly. Instead of demanding trust, design consistency so reliable that trust becomes reflex. Even in small domains, your business, your relationships, your influence, the principle holds. Design the pattern, and the pattern will design the people. The key lies in predictability. Once your system produces consistent results, it breeds belief, and belief, once solidified, becomes self-reinforcing. Followers justify your design as if it were divine order. You no longer lead through charisma or passion, you lead through inevitability. But beware, designing leadership requires cold detachment. The builder cannot become the building. You must remain outside the structure you create, always able to modify, manipulate, or destroy it without sentiment. History punishes rulers who fall in love with their own systems. Louis XVI trusted the monarchy's tradition more than its design. He believed the throne itself would protect him. It didn't, because the structure had decayed, and he had forgotten how to engineer obedience. Never confuse inherited order with designed power. Only design ensures survival. Leadership by direction burns out when the leader sleeps. Leadership by design endures while the leader is forgotten. And that, perhaps, is the highest form of manipulation, to remain invisible while your system rules in your name. So look around your world. The rules, the norms, all the invisible walls that shape your choices. Someone built them. And the question you must ask yourself is chillingly simple. Are you the designer or the designed? Because only one of them holds the pen that writes history, and only one can erase it. Thus ends this chapter of control. But the next truth, the one that separates rulers from gods, lies not in systems, but in perception itself. Power is not loud. It does not shout, threaten, or beg. It designs. It waits. It moves unseen. The highest form of control is not to force obedience, but to make obedience feel natural. To shape minds without touching them. To bend reality until people call their submission choice. This is the true art of domination. You do not lead through emotion. You lead through environment. You do not persuade. You construct inevitability. And while others chase followers, you build frameworks that make followers chase you. So ask yourself, are you the one being shaped or the one shaping? Because every system, every influence, every relationship hides a designer behind the curtain. And only the few ever step behind it. If you hunger for more truths like this, subscribe. If you have thoughts worth testing, leave them below. And if you know another mind ready to wake, share this with them. The lesson is not over. It never is. Power only sleeps until you learn to design it.